Out of all the genres of games that I've played through my 17 years of life, none have quite left the impact as the survival horror genre. The genre has often thought to have been originated by 1989's Sweet Home and 1992's Alone in the Dark, as they share many similarities with contemporaries in the genre today, but the term was not officially used until 1996's Resident Evil.
Stop it! Don't open that door!
But Chris is...
What is it?
And once Resident Evil came out, it was never the same. Until 2005, when Resident Evil 4 came out. Resident Evil 4 switched it up. Instead of having a few enemies in a given encounter and focusing more on puzzles that you needed a degree in clown school to complete, the game's focused more on being more badass, and instead of being scary, it was scary-themed. With the implementation of the new over-the-shoulder camera, it allowed for the game to be more fast-paced, visceral, headshots counted more, you can actually aim your gun, just a lot of improvements overall to the formula. The reason I gave that little, history lesson is because Dead Space is a game that takes a lot from the genre's history and kind of revitalized survival horror, and its effects are still seen today. The game was action-oriented with high-density combat, but was more than just scary-themed. The game was actually scary to begin with. The atmosphere of the USG Ishimura was unmatched by anything else at the time. The riveting combat of the gameplay was better than a lot of horror games, and the story and the setting took a lot of inspiration from 80s sci-fi horror. John Carpenter's The Thing, Ridley Scott's Alien trilogies, and a bunch of other things on the side, mixed with Lovecraftian horror because of the monsters, body horror, cosmic horror, all of it. Dead Space was truly a game that was ahead of its time and was destined to become a classic. Then EA killed it. Yeah, in case you missed it, Dead Space was actually a pretty good franchise. The first two, incredibly solid, classic games. The third one, let's just say it wasn't that good. Because of studio interference from EA and just a general lack of vision for the third game, Dead Space 3, while not being a bad game, was kind of a mess. And then EA expected it to sell 5 million copies, and when it didn't, they shut down the Dead Space franchise for what we thought was for good. But then, out of nowhere, after the Callisto Protocol flopped, Dead Space was announced to be getting a remake. Except Visceral Games wasn't doing it, because in case you missed it, they're gone, because Battlefield Hardline flopped, and that was their last chance. But when I heard that the remake of Dead Space was being developed, I was hopefully optimistic at best. Before the remake, there was this little game, like I said earlier, called the Callisto Protocol, and it was kinda bad and a mess at launch with huge stuttering issues, locking deaths behind a season pass for some reason, and an overall just lack of quality that Dead Space had, it was made by Glenn Schofield, who made Dead Space. And since the Callisto Protocol was marketed as a spiritual successor to Dead Space, I had myself wondering, was Dead Space, even that good? Or was it just nostalgia plaguing me through its venomous rose-tinted grasp that it has on everyone? Then I heard more and more from the interviews and the developers where they spoke about removing control and replacing it with cutscenes, which, in my eyes, means we're adding cutscene triggers every 20 feet to make sure you don't miss anything or you don't get to play the game. I'm looking at you, God of War. So with each passing day, my optimism got lower and lower. But that brings me to the topic of today's video. The Dead Space remake is actually really good, and it's proof that the Callisto Protocol was just a fluke, and Dead Space is actually a one-of-a-kind game you just can't replicate without any of the heart and soul. This remake is faithful to the 2008 game to a T, and actually improves in a lot of ways. But there's also a lot of changes that just kind of baffle me. But like I said, a lot of the things that did get changed in the remake, for the better. Isaac actually has a voice in this game, because he wasn't voiced until Dead Space 2. But he actually has a voice instead of being silent, which just improves the overall atmosphere of the Ishimura, because he only talks when it's absolutely necessary. He doesn't sit there and say, "Oh, I should pick that up. Oh, I need to look at that. Oh, this used to go here." He only talks when the crew talks to him, or after combat he'll be like, "What the hell was that?" And the graphics, dude, oh my god, this game is beautiful. But holy shit, is it dark sometimes. I think it adds to the feeling of being stranded on the Ishimura, but I don't know. I don't know if it was a lighting thing in the engine that just made it look ugly or what. I kind of like it, but I kind of don't, because sometimes you just can't see. But it really helps when, like, the light goes out in some rooms. But one thing that I really don't like about this remake is that the voice acting, especially for your crewmates, is kind of bad.
Shit, Isaac. Those things you've killed, their biomass is pulled down in the cargo bay. It's recombined itself into... Well, it's something huge, and the marker's embedded right in the middle. How the hell do we do this?
Like, the guy who does Isaac, great. He's the guy who did it in Dead Space 2 and 3. He knows what he's doing. But they replaced the rest of the voice actors for your crew. And when you have to match up against the original guy who played Hammond in Dead Space, you're done. You're donezo, finito. And then the voice actress for Daniels, she's just kind of... I don't want to say bad, because I don't like calling voice actors bad, but it's forgettable. She does not do better than the 2008 counterpart, in my opinion. But really, aside from that, I loved this game. The story is great. Everything about it is great. I love the New Game Plus. The way you upgrade things is better now. Just everything is more intuitive and flows better, in my opinion. But with that being said, let's go into the story. The story of Dead Space is one pretty simple and easy to follow, so I'm going to try and go through the game chapter by chapter, highlighting the different parts of the game that I liked and my various observations through my playthrough. The game opens with Isaac Clarke, the world's best engineer, on a ship with a crew going to investigate a distress signal from the USG Ishimura, an elite planet cracker as the game calls it. The purpose of the Ishimura is just a mining vessel, and it just so happens that Isaac's wife, girlfriend, whatever, I forgot, is actually stationed on the Ishimura. In this universe, Earth's natural resources were expended long ago, so the need to mine planets for resources is a commonality, with many ships serving this purpose. Immediately, two of the biggest things in this remake are presented to you. One, like I mentioned earlier, is that Isaac is no longer a silent protagonist. Isaac actually speaks and takes off his helmet multiple times throughout the game, which is greatly appreciated and allows for a connection between the story. But during gameplay, he actually stays silent so you can stay immersed in the game, which is greatly appreciated. The back and forth between the crew and Isaac feels like it's been there the whole time, but when you go back to the 2008 game, it just feels so barren because Isaac doesn't talk, because he didn't actually start speaking, like I said, until Dead Space 2. The other big thing that is present in the remake is the stuttering this game has on PC. I'm running the game on high settings 1080p with DLSS set to balance, and the game still stutters quite a bit. Not as bad as something like Callisto, since the game compiles shaders before you actually start, which helps a lot, but the game still stutters like a kid who's nervous during his presentation quite a bit. I, by no means, is a technical expert, and I know little to nothing about frame time, compiling shaders, so if you are interested, I would recommend the Digital Foundry video, where he goes actually in depth on the game's performance and explains the details in problem. So if you see stuttering in the video, blame that, not my PC. But going back to the crew, they try and board the Ishimura, but something goes wrong, causing them to crash land on the Ishimura. Once going inside, it's revealed that nobody is actually there. Isaac, Hammond, the black guy, Daniels, the lady, and Chen are all attacked by necromorphs. Chen is killed instantly, and Isaac becomes separated from the crew and is set further down into the ship. Once Isaac escapes, he's presented with a workbench, and possibly one of the best weapons in gaming history, the plasma cutter, and on the wall it says, "Cut off their limbs," written in blood. Then you are thrusted into a combat encounter, where you learn that the only way to kill the necromorphs is to dismember them. The idea of having to dismember the necromorphs instead of just shooting them in the head like a normal bad guy is a genius idea, and I love it, and I love the fact that only Dead Space really does it right. The combat of Dead Space is one of the greatest aspects, like I said earlier, and it really needed no adjusting in the remake, as the idea of having to dismember the necromorphs to kill them, instead of just headshots, is something that is fun, engaging, and actually scary because you can't just shoot them in the head. Not to say that there isn't anything wrong with the system of headshot to kill, like Resident Evil 4 does it well, but the game definitely would not be as engaging without the dismemberment mechanic. While the plasma cutter is the gun that you will probably use throughout most of your playthrough, you get a lot of cool weapons in the game, like a saw gun, a bigger version of the plasma cutter that, quite frankly, isn't that good, a flamethrower, and a force gun, and a big-ass laser, for example. That's not all of them, I think I forgot one or two. But like I said, the plasma cutter will probably be your bread and butter throughout the entire game. In the remake, they also added something called the flesh mechanic, where you can melt or push the skin off necromorphs, which in turn will make it easier to kill the necromorphs. It's a pretty cool feature that actually enhances the gameplay and the atmosphere, but I didn't find myself interacting with it all too much. It's cool though. Eventually, you re-establish connection with Hammond and Daniels, and you're tasked with fixing the tram line so you can travel throughout the ship. You are then presented with one of two power-ups that you're going to get and use throughout the entire game. Stasis is the ability to just slow down time. You see a door that's moving too fast? Stasis it. You'll be able to walk right through it. You see an enemy going at you too fast? Slow him down. You'll be able to shoot him. The other ability that you get is Kinesis. This lets you just pick up items and throw them around. The only thing that you can't pick up is the goddamn hamburger. I found that Kinesis was used more on a puzzle sense compared to that of a combat sense, unlike Stasis. Because more often than not, Kinesis will just have you pick up a box and move it, or pick up a battery and put it in the wall. Or, the best use in the entire game, zero gravity basketball. Yes, that is something that you can do in this game. I loved it back in the original, and I love it here as well. It's actually better here than in the original because it has the Dead Space 2 zero gravity mechanics instead of the leapfrog from the original. From here, Isaac further explores the ship, repairing its systems and making an effort to discover more about the necromorphs. Throughout the game, you learn more about Aegis 7, the planet that the Ishimura has been orbiting and mining for years. Because even though the planet was isolated, the crew had continued to stay there because their true objective wasn't mining the planet, but rather to rescue an old extraterrestrial artifact called a red marker. The red marker is the reverse-engineered copy of the black marker and is studied by the Church of Unitology. And oh boy, let me say, these guys are very incompetent. The Unitologists believe that the marker holds the secret to eternal life, so when the colonists on Aegis 7 seemingly found another copy of the marker, they sent the Ishimura on a mission to retrieve it under the disguise of a standard mining job. While learning more and more about Unitologists, Isaac is reunited with Hammond, who is trying to stop the Ishimura from running into a nearby asteroid field. But it is also revealed by Hammond that he was attacked by Chen as a necromorph. And that's another thing about the remake that I'm not a huge fan of. This remake, for some reason, is fascinated with Hammond being head over heels for this necromorph version of Chen. He just refuses to let him go. Hammond now has Chen locked up in an escape pod, and he just siphons him out into space, which will come in handy later.
There once was a ship from the DETD Ishimura USG. She cracked on boom with gravity. Go me, bully boys, go. Huh. Soon may the Callion come to save our souls and take us home. One day when the fixing is done, we'll take our leave and go. 3 score years she served her tour. 30 planets cracked and poor. The captain called no fly and swore he'd take that mucker in tow. Huh. Soon may the Callion come to save our souls and take us home. One day when the fixing is done.
But after that whole ordeal, Isaac is then tasked with going out into space to recalibrate the ADS cannon. This section of the game is kind of buns, not gonna lie, because the only thing you do is just a below average turret section, which the section is repeated multiple times throughout the game, and is even used for a boss fight, so it gets pretty boring fast in my opinion. Anyways, after calibrating the cannon and destroying the asteroids, Isaac receives a mysterious signal from Nicolan Medical, and decides he's gonna go investigate. On the way to Medical, Isaac discovers additional details about the Ishimura's retrieval of the marker, including the fact that the captain, Matthias, managed to convert many of the scientists and researchers aboard the craft to Unitology. It's also revealed that the marker was driving those around him crazy, with many of the people exposed giving them extreme paranoia, severe depression, and vivid hallucinations and intrusive thoughts, causing them to grow violent, which will come in handy later. This description, though, for me at least, added so much to the general atmosphere of the game. The game going into explicit detail on the decline of one's sanity adds so much to the psychological horror element of the game that I find so fascinating. Mix this with the blatant cosmic and body horror that the necromorphs provide, make it a chilling atmosphere, and it surrounds the entire game. I just love it. Later, it's revealed that after blowing a crater on Aegis 7, the colony there was attacked. They asked for help from the Ishimura, but then cut off communications. Matthias made the decision to go help the colony, which was questioned by the crew. This led Dr. Kine to try and sedate the captain, but he accidentally ended up killing him via needle to the eye, which happens to all of us. I don't blame him. While this happened, though, a loose ship from the colony was sent to the Ishimura, but on this ship was necromorphs, not people, which is how they got on the ship. After learning this, you're then frozen in stasis by Mercer, a mad scientist from the Church of Unitology who only cares about one thing, convergence. You might be asking what that is, and you won't know for a while. But after doing his evil bad guy rant, he decides to show you his newest creation, the Hunter. The Hunter is an unkillable necromorph that periodically chases you throughout the game. You can stasis him, you can shoot his limbs, or you can juke him, but you can't kill him. Now I know the whole purpose of the monster is supposed to be this unkillable force of nature, and it's supposed to humble the player by presenting something that you can't actually kill. But I found it to just be more of an annoyance than not, because the most effective strategy for taking care of the Hunter is to just press stasis and walk the other way. And the encounters where he came in later in the game, it just had me rolling my eyes, and it just made me feel like, oh, this guy again? Instead of the oh shit moment like Mr. X from Resident Evil 2 Remake, or even Nemesis from Resident Evil 3 Remake. But this is more of a minor annoyance, because I can't stand the whole unkillable enemy trope. I think it's annoying, and I think, like, Outlast, I don't like it. That's just me, though. But after that little run-in with the Hunter, you're told to go to hydroponics, where you're tasked with stabbing Weezer members in order to get the poisonous gas out of the ship and remove the threat of the Leviathan. You may be asking what the Leviathan is. It's a giant slab of meat on the side of the ship. Okay, here's a little side tangent, but I love the Leviathan. I don't know why, but one of my favorite things about Lovecraftian and cosmic horror is the creature design usually just being a big blob of just meat. Any design like this works for me. The Leviathan from this game, the Bakers in Resident Evil 7, even though they're technically mold, I don't care, I'm counting it. The Apothecans from Black Ops 3 Zombies, whatever the hell was going on there. Just anything like that, where it's just a big meat creature, I just love it for some particular reason. I don't know why. It's not fascinating, it's not innovative, it's just cool. So after you go and clear out all the Weezer members, you fight the Leviathan, and you place an SOS beacon on a rock, and it sends it out into space. But then you have a run-in with Dead Wife. Now, Isaac doesn't know she's dead, but if you have an oodle of cognitive function in your brain, you can probably guess that she's dead, and it's all in Le Head. After this little run-in where you have to defend your wife, you then go fight the Leviathan a second time in a worse boss fight. After defeating the Leviathan a second time, though, you then reactivate communications, managing to get in touch with the USM Valor. It seems that a rescue is on its way, until the soldiers pick up an Ishimura escape pod, and if you've been paying attention, that escape pod has Necromorph Chen in it. So then, the Valor crashes onto the Ishimura, and then Hammond and Isaac both board the ship separately in hopes to find a singularity core on the ship that will help them power up another ship so they can skiddy on out of here. But once Isaac and Hammond both get to the core, Hammond then locks the door, and then Chen, as a necromorph, comes in there, and Hammond's like, "Oh, no, please, mister. Please don't kill me." And then they kill each other. They run into the singularity core, which is extremely dangerous, because they needed that to get off the ship, and it could have just exploded with the rest of them, but it was only covered in blood, thank God. But then, you go back to the Ishimura, and you make your way to the crew quarters in search of a shuttle that you can actually install the singularity core into. He then encounters Mercer again, and the red marker. While down there, another encounter with the Hunter ensues. You then get away from the Hunter, and you run into Dr. Kine. Despite the fact that Kine has obviously been affected by the marker, he comes off as a voice of reason, which I don't really like, because in the original, he was a schizophrenic, but now he's just kind of like, he's chill, he's a voice of reason. I don't like it. Anyways, even though he's been affected by the marker, Isaac asks him for help. Which it's then revealed that, in the Ishimura's mining operations on Aegis 7, it exposed a massive monster known as the Hive Mind. The Hive Mind has been attacking you throughout the game, and it was the reason for the Necromorph outbreak. But if the red marker is brought back to Aegis 7, it can be used to contain the monster. Even though Isaac is hesitant with this plan, he decides to help Kine because, like I said, he's not schizophrenic anymore, so it makes him seem like he's a voice of reason. So, he then decides to assist Kine and bring the marker back to the planet in order to help end the situation. You then encounter Mercer a third time, and he's sitting there screaming about convergence, second life, all that jazz, and then he's just crushed by a giant tentacle from the Hive Mind, which I find it to be anticlimactic, but I don't really know how you would service him as a villain. He didn't really do anything. He was just kind of crazy. I mentioned this earlier, but the Church of Unitology are very incompetent at their job. To start off, they accidentally crack open the wrong planet, which revealed the marker, and eventually created the necromorphs, so good job on that. Secondly, from what I gathered, the whole point of the church is that they want to become necromorphs because they think it's the final form of evolution, which is just insane. And lastly, the guy who discovered the marker told everyone, don't mess with this is bad. So naturally, the church had him killed and said he died for their sins, which is very funny to me. And it's also funny that the Church of Unitology is very much inspired by Scientology. But if you ask an original developer of the game, they will not say that is true because they do not want to be chastised by the Church of Scientology. You then load the marker onto the ship, and the game makes it painfully obvious that you're at the end of the game. Because Isaac says, oh, this is it for the Ishimura, we ain't going back. And then a big-ass pop-up says, you can't go back, Chuckle Nuts. So, while on board, Isaac and Nicole prepare the red marker and prepare to go seal the Hive Mind away before flying to Aegis 7 together. The marker, however, launches an Avenger-style energy beam into the sky once they place it on the planet. Soon after, Nicole starts ranting to Isaac, telling him, make us whole again, and starting, convergence is necessary. Isaac tries to cut the tethers surrounding the crater containing the creature, and after realizing that the marker isn't sealing the Hive Mind away, he then encounters Daniels, remember her, who is holding Nicole prisoner, because Daniels was actually a double agent the whole time, and she tried leaving you, but then you called the ship back, and then it's a mess. Then, the biggest bombshell is dropped on you. Nicole was actually dead the whole time. Ooh, who thought? After realizing Isaac has been bamboozled the whole time, Daniels rushes back to the ship, but the Hive Mind then intercepts them, and for some reason Isaac tries to help Daniels even though she's double-crossed him and tried to kill him. Anyways, the Hive Mind then kills Daniels and traps Isaac. In a admittedly pretty cool spectacle boss fight, you kill the Hive Mind. I mean, it's an easy boss fight, simple boss battle, it's pretty cool. You then go to space, and then you have the classic jump scare done a little worse, where Nicole is staring back at you in the passenger seat. Rah, roll credits. The game actually has a New Game Plus, which that's another one on Callisto Protocol, because that didn't have that at launch. But the New Game Plus actually gives an alternative ending. In this ending, Isaac has his head filled with marker, and it seems to actually be more canon for Dead Space 2 in my opinion. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with the Dead Space 2 remake, if they end up making that ending canon, or if they even make a Dead Space 2 remake. Who knows? When I first played Dead Space back in 2012, I instantly fell in love with it, even though at that point I was a little coward and I couldn't play a horror game to save my life. So it came as a shocker to me that when the credits rolled, I considered it, and still do, to be one of my favorite games of all time. Now, we're in 2023, and the remake of Dead Space is up there with my favorite games that I've played in recent memory. I think it might actually surpass the original, in my opinion. It was an incredibly solid experience throughout. I loved my time back on the USG Ishimura, and I hope that EA actually continues the Dead Space IP. Especially because John Carpenter wants to make a movie adaptation, so don't mess this up, EA. I still know who you are. I don't care that you made a good Star Wars game. People may have forgotten what you do, EA, but I still have my eyes on you. I remember. I definitely would recommend this game to anyone who likes horror, or anyone who really just wants a solid gameplay experience. I hope they make a sequel, though. Maybe call it something like Dead Space 2 or something. Okay, so that took longer than expected. This video was supposed to come out on Monday, but I just kind of got busy, and I don't know, it just took a while to make this video, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, I mean, next review is probably going to be Destiny 2 Lightfall. I might throw in a video in between there, because it comes out on the 28th. I'm currently recording this on the 20th, so I don't know, I might not. I might just wait, make a Lightfall video, I don't know. But yeah, I'm going to let green screen me take care of the outro. Alright, I'm going to make this one quick. I'd just like to say thank you for all the support recently. Thank you for making it to the end of this video if you did. If you see my face, I mean you did. Yeah, if you liked the video, I'm not going to sit here like, oh, please, mister, please subscribe. I'm not going to do that. I mean, you can subscribe if you want. You can like if you want. You can comment if you want. I don't care, honestly. I mean, I'd appreciate it, but you don't have to. I do this for fun. I don't make money. But yeah, thanks. Later.